presents Board, James Board. I'm Luke.
I'm Lars.
And I'm Dad.
A little bit different than what we were anticipating because of a hiccup on my end. But before we start up on that, how's everyone doing?
Things are great around the Greensboro family household. I defended my doctorate on Friday, so I am officially Dr. Farabee.
Awesome. Congratulations.
So it was a pretty great feeling. So Dad was able to come watch it, and
that was
really good.
That was really interesting to watch that whole process. Mom and I really enjoyed that. So thanks for the invitation, Lars.
Of course. Mm-hmm. Lucas, how you doing?
I'm okay. Not too much has been going on, but I'm doing all right.
Dad, how about you?
Oh, good. Mom and I are doing great. Of course, Grandma is back in the hospital. I don't think she ever got over she had her gallbladder out, and then she had they left behind a gallstone, and then she got pancreatitis. And I don't think she got over the pancreatitis before they let her out. So she's back in the hospital now, which is where she should be, just so they can take care of her. So fingers crossed, everything will work out, and she'll be able to go home.
Well, that's good.
Good.
Yep.
Yeah, this one was this week's a little bit different. You know, when you think of James Bond, regardless of who you think of as James Bond, I think a lot of purists think Sean Connery, but the through line is the Broccoli. It's Cubby, Broccoli, and who was the other guy?
Oh, Saltzman. And then it turned into Wilson down the end. But exactly.
That's like the through line, like Eon Productions. You know, so even if it's not Sean Connery, you know, when it's Roger Moore, when it's George Lazenby, when it's Timothy Dalton, when it's
there's a not so much a theme, but there's a continuity and consistency between them to where you know what James Bond does. You even though they're different actors that portrayed him, and some and they've gone through different periods in the 80s and 90s and some
are
it's still the same kind of theme.
Right, there's a through line.
Yes.
Right? It's the same sort of thing.
Consistent.
This is not that. This is one of those that is outside of. So I'm not even going to be making. I didn't make a martini because this is not a James Bond movie.
No, this is more of an RC Cola and a peanut butter and jelly sandwich.
And nothing against RC Cola or peanut butter and jelly sandwich. But when you're looking for a martini, it ain't that.
So, 1967's Casino Royale, which there are parts of this that I actually thought were pretty interesting, and those parts tended to be the first half of the movie before. There's a great quote by Roger Ebert of calling it a definitive example of what can happen when everybody working on a film goes simultaneously berserk.
and when you have a film that has 5 directors.
One of which is John Huston.
Yeah. Who's actually in the movie.
Who's in the movie. And I mean, okay, so Casino Royale, 1967... A little bit of some odd backstory here. It is, and Dad, I know that you've done the synopsis. I don't even know if we should do a synopsis for this one because it is just nonsense.
You can't, other than it loosely follows the story of Casino Royale with Lashif and the Baccarat and the card game and the Lashif wanted the check, but.
It loosely follows it in the sense that a pair of pants is cloth.
Well, it's and we've already seen this story done at that TV movie. You know, we saw one of the early ones that we watched. We've already seen this one done.
Yes.
But so apparently, Casino Royale, I think, was the first James Bond novel. Yes. And the person that made this movie bought the rights to it, like outright, like bought it before Cubby and his team got it. And wanted to basically sell it to Eon, to Everything or Nothing Productions, and they wouldn't take it. So instead of making it a straight-up movie, they made it a parody. And that's hard to do if you're not Mel Brooks or the Abrams brothers, or the Zaz, right? The Zucker and
there
Abrams.
Also wasn't if you're going to make a parody, there needs to be a common thread throughout the whole thing. This was This was 5 people making 5 different movies, and then one of the directors actually had to stitch all of this together at the end to try to make some sense out of this.
And
And
really,
it was...
it's funny because
Oh my God.
it is, we're coming on the heels of Thunderball, and then like 2 months later we have You Only Live Twice, and those movies.
Yeah.
So let's take all of the Sean Connery movies. That's all we have for now, right? Because we haven't gotten in. So Dr. No, From Russia with Love, Goldfinger, Thunderball, and then You Only Live Twice. Cool, just cool movies. He is a cool dude.
Yeah.
It's almost like they're dated, but not horribly dated. Like, there's some problematic things with treatment of women and all that kind of stuff, but it's not horribly dated. It's just they're cool movies. This is horribly dated.
This is so flower power.
This was
1967.
Like Laugh-In
everybody's
kind of stuff.
Everybody's groovy.
This was James Bond by way of a bad episode of Batman 66.
Yeah.
Yeah, it was just it was the Bond 2.
It's bad.
Almost.
It's bad when you say. It's bad when you can look back and say the Batman television series was classy compared to what we just witnessed.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Hey, now, in this household, we respect Adam West.
Oh no, absolutely. but
still.
they are what they are. But this was just there's a couple things that were interesting to me, and it's Burt Bacharach does the music,
and was up for the Oscar for the song
and the
Look of Love.
The Look of Love is a really
and
great
that
song.
was it just blew my mind that wait a minute, I didn't realize that was in this movie.
It's a great
and
song.
he wrote that song for that movie.
It all made sense why Burt Bacharach is in Austin Powers now.
Yep.
This actually was a very bad Austin Powers movie.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, well, it made me appreciate Austin Powers even more. That wow, it really was digging from all of these sources. It wasn't.
Oh yeah.
Like they really knew their source material, and that's why it's so much better of it's a spoof.
Yeah.
But that one has a through line that has a plot, that has a villain. There's stakes. There's characters. This is not that. The other, he throws some shade at Sean Connery early on, and this is the most interesting thing for me in this movie. So David Niven is Sir James Bond, and he is retired. He was the original spy, and he has since retired. They're calling him back, like all the heads of MI6 and the CIA, and even like the Russians, like they're all asking for help. They're asking to bring him back in. And he says, "You've given my number and my name to that sexaholic playboy," And what that said to me was, that explains why when different actors come in, they're called James Bond and they have 007. That's a name and a designation. That's not their real name.
That's going to come up on at least 2 different movies that both infuriate me for the same reason. We'll get to them. We will get to them later on.
But does that make sense though?
But,
like that?
No, that's 100%.
It really does, and this whole movie made a parody of. It was like James Bond. Everybody in the world knew who James Bond was, knew what 007 was, and it just. I don't know. It was completely different than any other handling of James Bond. Yeah, he was a merchandise almost.
Yeah. Now, one of the things that was really frustrating is it couldn't tell what kind of parody it was.
Right.
It couldn't say it wasn't a loving parody of it, like the way a Mel Brooks movie is incredibly
Frankenstein or a Blazing Saddles,
where it worships the material.
Yeah, speaking of
the
Frankenstein,
material it's making fun of. Yeah. What the hell was with the Frankenstein?
I want to know.
We're not going to talk
all
about
of a
that.
sudden why are Native American Indians parachuting out of airplanes with 007 stenciled on their forehead?
Mm-hmm. Well, that's the thing. When Mel Brooks made Young Frankenstein, he basically made a Universal monster movie. And when he made Blazing Saddles, he made a Western. It was funny. But he made a Western. That's the key to a good spoof. And when the Zaz brothers made Airplane, they made a disaster movie. It was really stupid, but that was what they were making. This was not a James Bond spy movie.
And I also
there's so much of
Go ahead,
so
Louis.
much of parody that is you can make there's the reverential parody where they love the material, which they clearly don't, and there's also the we're going to tear it down and deconstruct it, a deconstructed parody, and it ping pongs back and forth between those two poles the entire movie.
Right.
I think you're giving them too much credit. I just
Probably?
think this was a very poorly made movie.
Yeah.
I mean, it was interesting.
Oh, it absolutely is.
I was reading, when they first started making the James Bond movies, one of the people they wanted as James Bond was David Niven. In the original, they wanted him as James Bond. I don't know why it didn't happen. That was interesting, as well as I read a lot about Peter Sellers in this movie.
What a
Peter
waste.
Sellers wanted to play it straight. He kept changing the dialogue and got into these horrible arguments with the directors because he wanted to play it as a James Bond movie. And he finally would walk off the set and he would not, the whole card game with Orson Welles. He and Orson Welles hated each other. And much of that film, they were not in the same room. They would film Orson Welles' part and they would film Peter Sellers' part and merge them together. It was just insane.
Yeah, Peter Sellers is actually the one guy. He would have made a good Bond based on his performance in this. He would have made a pretty good Bond.
But
He really
what a
would have.
waste. You have Peter Sellers,
Yes.
one of the funniest human beings ever, and he's wasted in this movie. There's, God,
Completely. And then the whole Orson Welles bit where all of a sudden he's doing magic tricks.
Yeah.
Well, Orson Welles went to the director, and Orson was a magician fanatic, and he asked if he could do magic tricks in the film, and the director said sure. So they added all that stuff into the movie, which was, I'm watching it going, what the hell is going on with this?
it was like let's throw everything in here and see what will stick, but none of what you're throwing in there is funny. There was a couple things that I laughed at. There's a Peter O'Toole cameo, and he says, "Who are you? This or this?" Like, I thought you were Peter O'Toole.
Yes.
Well, he's the finest man in the world, and it's Peter O'Toole saying that about himself.
And do you know how he got paid for that? A case of champagne. Peter O'Toole said, I want to be in this movie. Give me a case of champagne, and I'll do a cameo."
Perfect.
Yeah, that's wonderful.
That's awesome. Well, you just see all the people that were in it. George Raft was in it.
dies.
He was an old actor in gangster movies. He was the one in the casino. He was flipping the coin.
Oh, he has a backwards gun and he shoots himself.
Yeah, exactly. He's an ancient actor that got all these different people to show up in this movie for nothing.
No. So they have the cute...
Other than a case of champagne.
Well, so apparently it was David Niven. David Niven is Sir James Bond. His plan is, we're going to go bust up Lashik. To do that, let's go have a bunch of James Bonds.
Yeah, let's confuse Smersh, and we'll name all of our spies James Bond.
So Peter Sellers is one of them, and the Q section with him is actually really great because if you look in the background, there's a scuba diver shooting a bow and arrow.
Shooting a bow.
Yeah.
That was the one. Like, I actually laughed out loud at that. That was ridiculous. And then there's like a Santa's elf following him. But it's craziness.
It was like on drugs. Because I was laughing at it too. I'm like, but this makes no sense.
It doesn't make any sense. But like, as far as like that Q scene, that kind of thing in the background, that was pretty funny. The scuba diver shooting a bow and arrow.
And the guy with the bowler his head blew up. And he goes, we need to work on that.
That was really good. But then they just didn't take it far enough where if your whole idea is we're going to go flood the scene with James Bonds, the gag should be, well, I'm James Bond. I thought you were taller. I thought you were a woman. I thought they should have, that should have been played up more. It's almost like the Scooby-Doo running into the different doors in the hallway. Well, they're all James Bonds.
And the whole, I mean, I agree with both of you. The only saving grace this whole thing was Peter Sellers, and he was funny. Mm-hmm. He was good. He tried to play it straight. But the whole scene with Ursula Andress, where he was dressing up as different people, I'm like, where is that coming from? Toulouse-Lautrec?
Right. I didn't get that. Woody Allen's in it, and
no, he's Jimmy Bond.
Problematic
at best.
At best. Watch the miniseries.
Well, but you got to look back. Okay, you're looking at it through
There's
a 1967
right.
lens.
Okay, and Woody Allen was Woody Allen was hot then. He has the most perfect Woody Allen line. He's being led to the gallows for the firing squad. Well, I have a low threshold for death. Like
that's one thing that's really interesting.
But even that whole thing with him, it kind of sort of made sense that okay, he always had it in for his uncle. Was it his uncle? Yeah. So he was the one that was doing all the craziness behind, so he could get rid of everybody and rule the world. Okay, he's Austin Powers, the evil guy. I get that. He was just really bad at it.
Yes,
he was just bad at it.
Something that's really interesting. We brought up that David Niven was Sir James Bond. If you look at the original sketches in the novels of James Bond,
he looks a lot like
almost like
Oh yeah.
Yeah, it made sense to have David Niven. It absolutely did.
But unfortunately, and I always liked David Niven, he wasn't very good in this.
Why was he stuttering?
Because that's another part of the indecisive parody thing. He has this perfect English gentleman, chaste spy persona, and all of his stutters are around beautiful women who are trying to sleep with him.
I never got that. It never.
I never got that part.
They say they're trying to break his implacable nature because it was a counterpoint to his sexed up replacement, that he wasn't going to do that part of he didn't do that part of the modern day spy thing. And so all of these women are fawning and falling over him and going to convents because they can't fall in love with him.
Deborah Carr is in the movie. Oh my God. William Holden is the CIA guy.
Yeah.
These are all well-known actors that I hope they got a lot of money for this.
Yeah.
I hope everyone got paid, and whoever built the sets, everyone who worked in this film got a paycheck. That's what I can say positively.
Hey, there's craft services people that got paid. There were set designers. All these people need money, and that's fine.
And I will say one thing that was actually really, honestly, too good for this movie was the Orson Welles' torture scene where he submits Peter Sellers to the Willy Wonka boat ride. What the hell was that torture scene doing in there? Because that was actually kind of creepy and should have been in a better movie.
And the reason they did all that was that they only had certain footage of Peter Sellers because he just started leaving. He wouldn't even act with them anymore.
Yep.
So they only had certain shots of him. So they tried to figure out, well, how can we piece something together? You know the scene where he gets out of the casino and he gets into the Lotus race car, and he's going to drive to chase him, and then the next scene,
immediately captured.
He's he's shackled in the chair. They didn't have any kind of segue to do that because they hadn't filmed anything with him because he wasn't there, so they just did it.
And I thought I'd fall asleep.
Because I was watching what the heck happened?
Like, I know everyone's making fun of me for getting into the Lotus. Like,
yes.
What are you doing? What's going on? And
I know.
And like zany, I'm fine with zany in movies. I really am.
That wasn't,
and that's why the end of Blazing Saddles, when the fight at the town,
they finally
burst into the throw out your hands,
the French stage,
like all that stuff. It's great because it's earned it. Like it has escalated to the point where we have gotten too big for this
insanity.
movie. Now we're going to overflow into all these other things. That's fine because you've earned that zaniness because you've built up to it.
You've built
this.
Right.
It basically ends with a Blazing Saddles ending when there's this giant fight, but you've not earned that because we've not followed along with the characters enough to understand what the hell's going on anyway.
I mean, you're looking at all of a sudden, where are the cowboys coming from?
Well,
And then they looked at all of the Native Americans parachuting out of airplanes, and you look at the parachutes they're using, and you're like, they were little teepees. I'm like, what are you doing?
I saw that. I like audibly gasped, like, "Wow, okay, that's something." But I will say, I got a chuckle out of the the American reinforcements are here, and it cuts to stock footage of that.
Cavalry.
That got a laugh. And then they actually burst into it. What was up with that weird that we're calling the police, and it cuts to the 1910s movie,
like the paddy wagon.
Do you know who was in that scene? They got Charlie Chaplin's, is it daughter, Geraldine Chaplin? There's a little cameo of her in that scene. Somehow they got her in there for that. That's the only reason they did that scene, was the Keystone Cops. I'm like, where's that coming from?
It was all over the place. It definitely was trying to cash in on the success of the James Bond movies. So this is, I liken this to, I mentioned, I hold the spoof movies of the Zaz, like your Top Secrets, your Naked Guns, and the Mel Brookses, your Blazing Saddles, those are top shelf. That's how you do a spoof movie. There. Then there's the movies that are like the date movies and the superhero movies and the Meet the Spartans, where it's, hey, we're going to make a movie, but then we're just going to throw a bunch of stuff that doesn't make any sense, and it's just, hey, here's a reference. Hey, here's a thing that you probably saw in a trailer. Here's a story that's happening today. Like, I think Britney Spears is in Meet the Spartans, and James Bond's in Meet the Spartans, and it's like, well, why? And it's just, let's throw a bunch of references in it.
And they become these weird time capsules.
This is the equivalent of that.
Yeah.
It is, hey, James Bond's hot right now. Let's throw a bunch of stuff in, and we'll cash in.
But it was just poorly done.
Oh, yeah. Oh, those are poorly done. Yeah. Those are very poorly done.
Oh, no. I know that. But still, this one is way up there. And it was actually a financial success.
Oh, big time. Yeah.
It made money. Now, I don't think there were a lot of repeat people going to see it.
No.
But it's a James Bond movie. People went to the theaters, and before they knew it, they raked in $14 million or whatever. But
right.
It's got to get better eventually.
It's got to get better eventually. No, it doesn't. It doesn't.
So I want to ask both of you a question. Did you actually watch every second of it, or did you fast forward?
I watched it every goddamn second.
Literally was playing a video game most of the time while I had it running.
Well, I some of it I had to just, I can't do this.
I watched every bit of it.
Some of it.
And again,
you watch every second. Wow.
There was an interesting thing, because again, I watched it and my mind wandered.
Yeah.
How could it not?
But the part where 007 becomes M,
it's
kind of cool. I watched in the Eon franchise. Mm-hmm. I watched that. That's a neat story where he has to take over, and he's in charge now of sending the missions out.
Right.
But he wants to be out in the mission. Okay.
Yeah.
Because he's older now. Right.
I'd watch that movie. That'd be interesting. That's a different kind of story. Mm-hmm. But yeah.
I like this car.
Miss Moneypenny is the daughter now, and she's going through and assessing all the future 00s. Is she the one that makes sure that all the 00s are sexually top notch? Because apparently that's what she does in one of the scenes. She makes sure that he's good. Well, Jesus fucking Christ!
I don't see how this was made. I know how this was made. I don't see how it was made. If that makes perfect sense.
I don't understand how it was ever pitched.
Yeah.
I mean, there must have just been, hey, we're going to make another James Bond movie. Look at how successful all these are. We're just going to make a comedy James Bond. And everybody said, here's some money.
But again, they did it so poorly because like a movie like Flynn.
Oh my God!
That's a send up. That's a send up of the James Bond movies, and that's a send up of spy movies. But it was done well.
All the Matt Helms, they're campy, and it's Dean Martin, but at least there was a story and you followed it, and he's a spy, and
because
absolutely
you have to, and you can wink at the audience. But you have to be able to have a solid story that you can then wink from. But if all you're doing is winking, then you're just Jimmy Fallon.
Hey now.
Laughing.
So it's just, knock it off.
Yeah.
Be a professional. Quit ruining your sketches.
But this whole thing, while I was watching it, when they got to the end and they just started, like you said, they just started piling in to go bigger and bigger and bigger. They ended up they didn't know how to end this thing.
No. So let's just kill everyone.
So let's just kill everybody, and everybody goes to heaven
Except for Woody Allen.
Except for Woody Allen goes to hell.
Episode title.
Okay.
Which,
that's okay, but it's like, really?
Yeah.
I
It's
take it back.
amazing.
This is the best movie ever. I said, take it back. This is the best movie ever. Everybody goes to heaven, and Woody Allen goes to hell. Perfect. Yeah, it was.
Yeah.
Again, it was an interesting artifact to slog through. There was some ideas, like I said, the idea of James Bond isn't 007. James Bond 007, that's the moniker, and that is what's passed on to
right.
Because there really isn't, when you look at the scope of all the all the people that have played him, the fact that James Bond gets married in one of them doesn't really track out through a lot of the others. It's referenced maybe once or twice, but it's inconsequential, and really the only things that are changing is the time period around him. So the fact that maybe this isn't just a completely different person now named James Bond.
Well, and even the times that they reference him being married later on, that could just be another facet of the code name that they've added on to.
Exactly. No, exactly. So I that was interesting to me. I'm like, okay, well maybe that's a good explanation to why there's different actors playing this character, and that was about it. And I think that they did that accidentally.
Yep.
The one interesting thing was
I'm saying once again, you're giving them way too much credit.
I think we've said all we can about this filth.
I just couldn't believe all of the people that were in this movie that were wasted.
I'm sure a lot of them were wasted being in this movie.
Easily.
Lots of them were wasted. I mean, Orson Welles, definitely.
Oh. What was the Periscope?
Right. Why?
I'm like, why is he in front of a Periscope?
And why was there a Frankenstein? I know you didn't want to bring it up, Lucas. I know you said you don't want to bring it up, but I want to bring it up. Why was there a Frankenstein?
Do you know who it was? Do you know who that guy was?
Who?
The guy that played Chewbacca.
Peter Mayhew?
Yep, I read that.
Of course.
I just read it.
Because why not? Cheers, Peter Mayhew.
Gosh.
But all of it, I'm like, why is a Frankenstein walking
This is when
down the hall?
there's for folks that won't see this movie, and you shouldn't.
Yeah.
He's
Please don't.
They're all, some of the James Bonds are trying to escape. I don't know what happened to where Peter Sellers was at this point, but Peter or David Niven.
He was dead. He was already dead.
Okay, so David Niven and a couple of the other people that have been pretending to be James Bond, they're trying to escape the underground lair, and there's just this Frankenstein guy just wandering about.
So, of course, David Niven said, oh, I'm going to ask him where the office is. And he goes over to Frankenstein asking where the office... Remember, it was the place they got in? And he goes and asks... And so Frankenstein walks up and bangs into a door, I guess, to tell him this is it. And he says, oh, thanks.
And it happens to be the door. Because...
Yeah. It was, we'll talk about the 80s movies and how cocaine was a hell of a drug. Man, these 60s movies, psychedelics, dude.
Not sure. This was LSD at its finest.
Yeah. Don't see this one, folks. If you're looking to do like a complete James Bond watch, this is not the Casino Royale to watch. The one to watch is Daniel Craig, and we'll get to him later.
Eventually.
I will say I am glad that I saw it because I've heard about it.
Me too.
I had never actually seen it. I'm surprised that we as a family, when I was a kid, that we didn't
Papa
go see
mentions
this.
it. He said he'll mention Jimmy Bond.
Yeah,
he'll say Jimmy Bond every once in a while, and it's like now I'm thinking you.
Well, maybe he and Mom went to see it because I didn't see this.
Good
one.
for them.
Yeah. Because I remember going to see Thunderball. I mean, I remember watching that movie like, oh my God, this is the greatest thing I've ever seen.
Yes, that is. These are quintessential movies. These are like they're ingrained in cultural DNA. I'm glad that this never we didn't get more of these. This was not great. And I'm sorry to be a stickler. I just knew that when we did this project, one of the things on my radar was I have not seen Casino Royale. If we're going to watch them all, we should watch them all.
We're going to watch them all.
I'm glad we did it. I will never watch this again.
Nope.
Golly.
Oh.
So I told you that mom bought me the set of, I have all the Blu-rays of all of them. And she said, oh no, this is not in it, as well as the other.
Never Say Never Again.
Which
Never
I've
Say
also
Never
not
Again.
seen.
Exactly. It isn't in it. And some woman sued the company that put this box set together that said these are all the James Bond movies. And she sued them saying, no, it's not. These two are missing. And I think the judge threw it out and said, no, you're wrong. Those are all the James Bond movies.
Perfect. Lucas, where can folks find us on the internet?
We can be found on Twitter at SwordInBoardcast. I am updating and making jokes fairly regularly. We can also be found on basically any streaming service that streams podcasts. Stitcher, Podbean, Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts, Pandora. Our theme music, Iron Curtain Shuffle, is created by the incredible Ryan Boyd. You can find them at Ryandroid on Twitter.
Our artwork is done by the wonderful Wes Forbes. Yep. Now, James Bond officially will return next time. For realsies this time. I know that we said last time he will return, and I'm sure audiences around the world thought the same thing when they rushed into the theaters to see, it's new James Bond. And we're duped.
James Bond will return in You Only Live Twice.